What is the best diet for long-lasting energy?
Fettuccine Alfredo. Time to carbo load.
Today, I'm going to debunk the myths and share with you what we can eat to increase our energy all day long. I'm Dr. Jake. I'm a naturopathic medical doctor and integrative physician in Salt Lake City, Utah. On this channel, I share with you how you can heal your body naturally without any harmful drugs or surgery. Be sure to subscribe for more videos like this one. I recently filmed a podcast with my co-host, Theresa Marie, in which we talk about a diet that we can follow to increase our energy all day long. Make sure you stick around to the end because we're going to talk about all the nuances that are involved to make our energy be durable all day long. So let's talk about the basics here. So we make energy from calories, and we get these calories from our carbohydrates, our proteins, and our fats. So carbohydrates and proteins, they get produced in something called pyruvate. Then the pyruvate goes into our mitochondria, and it goes through several different mechanisms of action to make ATP. So that's how that works. Fat goes through a different mechanism, and it gets converted into a ketone, and then that goes into the Krebs cycle and starts making energy production through that. We also need all the nutrients, the vitamins, the minerals for every different mechanism that happens inside the mitochondria to make ATP to be able to function appropriately. So we need the calories and the nutrients. It's not about, hey, we're going to have great energy if we just get calories in. That's so far from the truth. And then there's a lot of inflammatory things that can happen from the foods that we eat that could bog down our metabolism. But we're talking about that in the future. But that's the basics of actually how our body makes energy production from our food.
Well, and that makes a lot of sense, especially when we hear about like empty calories, right? Like a lot of, and I know you're going to be digging in here in a second about the standard American diet and how that's not actually helping our energy levels at all. But like one of the things that a lot of people, a lot of Americans eat are food that really don't have any nutritional value. They have calories, it's fat, it's carbs, it's protein, but there's no nutrients alongside it. And then they wonder why when they eat it, they feel tired afterward because that's part of the equation. But those nutrients are really like there's a synergistic effect, right? That really works together to really maximize the energy that you get. So aside from the empty calories that we're eating, what's the problem with the standard American diet? Why is it horrible for energy production?
I think a big thing you talked about there is it's low in nutrients that our body actually needs to be able to make energy production. It's very high in sugar, which just is, okay, we can think of it as just pyruvate. Doesn't have many of the nutrients that we need to be able to get those mechanisms of action to work. Also, it's very high in poor quality fatty acid that actually cause damage to our cells. They're rancid and cause more inflammation and cause damage to our cells throughout our body. It also is very low on fruits and vegetables. We need these fruits and vegetables to be able to decrease inflammation, supply our body with great magnesium supply. And also for our cells, there's so many, we talk about some basic nutrients that are needed for the mitochondria, but the mitochondria use all kinds of different nutrients. And we get majority of our nutrients from our vegetables and our fruits. So we need to eat a lot more of that. And we need to eat good quality meats. We're usually eating meats that are really high in fat, low in good quality protein, and it's usually really high in saturated fats and inflammatory saturated fats, which then, like I said earlier, is going to bog down our herd metabolic reactions throughout our body. So in the nutshell, it has way too many poor quality fats, way too high in sugar, and doesn't have enough nutrients in it. So, and we're also eating our foods at the wrong times and eating the right food. Like we're pounding the sugar in the morning, which is the worst thing we could do for our energy production.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. I was told that Wheaties was the breakfast of champions.
That is true. That's a great slogan. That sold a lot of boxes. It made a lot of people sick at the same time.
Indeed. Indeed. Okay. So we know that the standard American diet is not helpful. And what I'm hearing you also mention, it doesn't seem like there's any issue you have in general with carbs or protein or fat. That's not the problem. It's the quality of fat, the quality of protein, the type of carbohydrates that we're taking. And what I hear you mentioning is when we're taking it. Why do you talk about when? How does this work with our day and how energy is typically made in the day?
So this is something I think most people don't really think about a lot. And this is going to be so fun to talk about is let's talk about cortisol. So cortisol is what we're supposed to make a lot of that in the morning. It's what gets us up in the morning, gets us going, gives us the drive, the focus, the concentration to get the morning going and get the work done that we need. So when we eat a lot of sugar in the morning, for example, if we eat pancakes or waffles, or we just eat some toast with some coffee or whatever, it's going to bog down our cortisol production, because what it does is our body, when you eat carbs, is going to decrease that cortisol production. When we don't eat that carbs, our body's going to be like, hey, I need to make cortisol. I need to increase my sugar production from my liver. So your body naturally, when you eat more protein or fat in the morning and low carbohydrate vegetables, for example, our body's going to increase that cortisol production in response to increase our sugar levels, just that is stored throughout our bodies. And guess what? When we get that increased surge of cortisol, we're going to feel really good. We're going to be energetic. We're going to get out of that little fog that we have in the mornings, and we're going to get things done like we need. So you're not going to get that little, oh man, I really don't feel good. I hate my mornings. I just don't really function very well. I don't really wake up to like 11 o'clock in the afternoon. That's big thing because of what you're eating, and you're eating tons of sugar. And most Americans, what they think of for breakfast is the things that I just listed. Maybe they have some eggs, but many times they have a ton of toast with it, with some jam and some honey. And then many times they have some coffee with tons of sugar in it. So you're just pounding the carbohydrates in the morning, which is like the worst thing that you can do. A great morning meal, and what I love to do and makes me feel the best, is pasture-raised eggs scrambled with several different vegetables. I like kale, I like spinach, onions, peppers, and tomatoes. You put that all, like 2 to 4 eggs, depending on how much you want to eat there. You put that all in there. And then I like to, my drink of choice that I have nowadays is a drink I created called Terra Brew. I do a brew, or the bullet brew is what I call it. And what I do with that is I do Terra Brew with coconut oil, with MCT oil, like 1 tablespoon coconut oil, half tablespoon of MCT oil. And I'm getting a great amount of protein and fat, and I'm really surging my cortisol production, which we're also getting from the Terra Brew there. So that's one example of like a breakfast that you can eat. You could also eat a breakfast that's really high in nuts and seeds that you blend up in a blender, and you add a lot of low carbohydrate veggies into there, and that's a great option also.
For those of you who are listening to this Terra Brew comment, we can put a link down below, but really, and we have some other episodes on it. It's a drink that he's made that's got a lot of nutraceutical mushrooms in it that are really good for creating natural energy, specifically at the mitochondrial level. So it's a really great combo to have with a high protein and high fat breakfast with all of those nutrients. And it's interesting that you mentioned, you know, that type of breakfast, because I actually discovered myself that I didn't feel good when I was eating carbs in the morning. So yeah, I mean, same thing. I, you know, go to work, and, you know, if let's say we're having a professional development day at work, you know, they would put out like bagels, muffins, toast, oatmeal, and like that's like breakfast. And you know, I'd eat that kind of stuff at work, or if I was home, I might eat some quick cereal in the morning. And then I was wondering why, for me, this was something that I was eating like, you know, 6, 7 o'clock in the morning. And then by 10 o'clock in the morning, I would start to feel just so tired. And then it was by accident that I discovered one day that I did not eat that, and I ate eggs instead. I think I might even had a little bit of cottage cheese or something like that. And I didn't have that crash that happened around 10:30 or 11. And I started noticing that, going, huh, that's weird. I feel better. So I started experimenting, and sure enough, I mean, every single time I ate a high carb breakfast, I felt like garbage. And when I ate a higher fat, higher protein breakfast, I felt so much better. And then adding in those vegetables really makes that difference. And then same thing with what you mentioned about the nuts and seeds, you know, making, and I think I've talked about this in another episode, you know, making a type of what we call note meal, you know, where it's kind of like oatmeal, but it's actually doesn't have like all of those oats in it. Instead, it has like hemp seeds and flax seeds and chia, and you can really make it taste super yummy. And then it's full of all of that, all of those nutrients as well. So super good. So this helps give us that rush of cortisol that is going to just get us all that energy. And then that kind of goes throughout the day. What happens to our cortisol levels over the course of a normal, healthy day when your circadian rhythms are on where they should be? What should that look like?
Yeah, so what we need to do is we need a lot of cortisol in the morning. That's what naturally our bodies are made to do. And then it's going to wax and wane a little bit throughout the day. and then it's supposed to decrease at nighttime. So I like to get a little bit of a boost of cortisol in the afternoon, because that's where that 2 p.m. slump or so, or 1 to 3 o'clock slump that happens, is from that cortisol little slump there. But that can happen big time too, is usually when we're eating for lunchtime, we're eating a lot of carbs again. Usually we're eating something with a lot of bread, or we're just eating a sandwich, or we're eating a burger with some fries or whatever, just ton of carbs again, that we're getting a not good quality protein and fat. In the afternoon, we don't necessarily have to be so low carb. We can have a little bit of carbs, but you still want to keep it lower. Like a great lunch is like a salad with some beef on it, or some chicken, or some salmon on there. You could also just get like a lettuce wrap if you want to eat some type of good quality grass-fed burger or something like that, with a salad on the side, or maybe a fruit. Those are some good options for lunchtime. So it's not quite as low carb, but still lower carb, so you are able to maintain that good energy level throughout the day. And then I say that we want to decrease our cortisol at nighttime so we're able to sleep really well. So guess what? You do get a time that you're actually able to have your carbs. And my recommendation is having that at nighttime, because when we eat our carbs at nighttime, like I said, that's going to decrease our cortisol production. And that's going to make us be able to sleep at night. So we're not ruminating our thoughts at nighttime when we're trying to go to sleep. We're able to decrease that when we eat our carbs. Let's say you are opposite and you're eating tons of protein and fatty acids and things like that, and low carb at night. Sometimes that can be difficult to fall asleep because you still are having that cortisol being supercharged.
That makes a lot of sense. So it seems like then if you're going to have spaghetti, for example, have that for dinner, not for lunch. And, you know, this is also a good time. Obviously, like spaghetti is wheat, and that opens up a whole other, can of worms when it comes to like what kind of carbohydrates we should be eating. But what are some examples, though, of some healthy carbs that will lower our, our cortisol, but also give us nutrients so that we're not, empty calories again?
So let's say if you don't have a wheat allergy or gluten allergy, whole wheat is a good energy source. It does have a lot of nutrients in it. We have modified it a lot, so a lot of people don't do well with it nowadays, and it can really bog you down and make you not feel very well. But if it's like a wheat from Italy that hasn't been changed a lot, that is actually really good quality and can be a great option there. We want to try to get our grains as whole as they can, like brown rice, for example. We don't want to do the white rice. We could do quinoa. That's a really fantastic option there too. So you want to make sure your grains are not changed as much. They're not processed as much. You want to keep them in their whole state and keep as much fiber as possible in there, because that's going to be good for our gut health, but also not cause too big of these spikes of our blood sugar that cause all kinds of myriad of issues.
Wonderful. All right. So what I'm hearing overall, again, going back to revisiting, is that you don't have any issues with protein, carbs, or fat. It doesn't seem like you lean towards any, like you should have a low carb diet, or you should have a high protein diet or high fat diet, but really is a matter of when you're eating it. Now, you're very specific with us on when to eat our carbs so that we can follow the natural cycle. What are your thoughts on how much fat or protein that we should be eating throughout the day? It should be the same all day long, equal amounts? Should we have, higher in the morning and less in the, you kind of touched, I guess, a little bit on that, maybe lesser in the evening so you can sleep better. But yes, please dig into that a little bit more for us.
So yeah, I want to make sure that we are getting good quality fats and good quality proteins. And I'm not going to dive into the exact percentages there, because that's not absolutely important, even though I do want you to get a little bit, I want you lower carb than higher carb. So right now, most Americans are eating like 75% carb. They're eating like 20% protein and getting very little fat in their diet. I do want to increase the fat more, like maybe 20, 30%, get our protein more on the 30% range. So we're more at like 40% on our carbs. That would be the ideal dietary ratio, but I don't want you to go crazy on that and like be counting all things, because you don't absolutely have to be that crazy to maintain great energy. But we do want to make sure, I'm talking about fats and proteins and all that, but we want to make sure we get good fats. So like the avocado oil of avocados, or olive oil or coconut oil, these are good quality fats. I don't want you to be pounding the canola oil or the vegetable oils or eating tons of lard or whatever like that. So that's going to be another component, not going to mess with your cortisol. Your cortisol is going to be okay, but these are very pro-inflammatory, which is going to bog down our mitochondrial function and not make it work very well. And then we're not going to make energy very well throughout our body. So there's so many different nuances to the diet. Is we do want to eat a diet that's anti-inflammatory. So we want, and grains in general can be pro-inflammatory. So we are decreasing those, and that's going to help with our, when we decrease that, it's going to help with our cortisol production, but also is going to help with our inflammation. And then we want to eat meat that is good quality, like grass-fed beef is going to be higher in omega-9 fatty acids. So it's more like an olive oil type of fatty acid, which is going to be great for anti-inflammatory effect. We want to make sure we eat chicken that's not just eating tons of corn, because that's going to be a ton of saturated inflammatory fatty acids in there too. We want them to eat in a variety of nuts and seeds, so going to have a much healthier outlook there. We want to make sure we get fish that's actually wild caught and not farmed, because if you eat farm salmon, it's going to be very high in saturated fats, just like a cow is that's eating tons of corn. If the fish is eating tons of corn and the cow's eating tons of corn, they're all going to have really fatty acids. Farm-raised salmon isn't high in omega-3 fatty acids. It's only the wild-caught wild salmon that is in there. So that's kind of given a general view there, is we want to eat at the right time, but eat foods that are low in inflammatory. So lower carbohydrate grains and lower poor fatty acids that are found in poor quality meat.
And then earlier you had mentioned for your breakfast that you like pasture-raised eggs. Can you explain why you promote pasture-raised over other types of eggs instead?
So like, let's say you're eating just say chicken egg, that's all they've been eating is corn. A lot of the eggs, that's what they do, is they feed them tons of corn, or they feed them tons of soy. These are going to make that fatty acids inside the yolk be very pro-inflammatory, and it's going to cause all kinds of problems for our body. One thing I left out too is refined sugar. That's a huge one too. We don't want to eat lots of refined sugar. That's going to bog down our metabolism because of the inflammation that causes, let alone all the problems with cortisol that we just talked about.
Exactly. And then going back to the eggs, you know, one of the things that I've learned is pasture raised eggs, they do cost a little bit more, but they're worth it. Pasture raised eggs, these are made by chickens that are, as Dr. Jake mentioned, have not been fed corn. They're actually been allowed to go out and on the pasture, right? So it's it's more opportunities than free range. So free range, I would say, is like the second, like if you can't find pasture raised, organic free range would be your second best option. But with pasture raised, they are given the freedom to peck. And then they're also supplemented with, especially if it's organic vegetables and fruits and things like that, which is what they should be eating, right? They are omnivores. So they shouldn't be just eating grains. They should be eating bugs and worms. And those are the types of things that they like, and then supplemented with those fruits and vegetables. So you're going to notice when you buy them that the yolks are so much brighter orange. Like now when I go to a restaurant and I order eggs at the restaurant, I'm always like, oh, like it looks like sick to me, because like the orange is like this pale yellow. And I know what a healthy egg looks like now. And so I've gotten spoiled where I just don't want to order eggs unless I'm at home, where I know I can get my good quality ones. But you'll feel better too, because of all those extra nutrients that are in there, and not all that corn that we've been, it seems like corn is in everything these days. They just added to it all. So
if you want to learn more about great diets for your health, click the videos to the right. I'm Dr. Jake, and I'll see you there.